Hello and welcome back to preparing 3D models for SDK. I'm Lucas, and today we're going to be talking about attach points. So in the previous video, we saw how to set up the articulations in our gmdf file. But as we discussed, there is way more SDK features that can be added to your 3D model, and one of those is attach points. So we have here our gmdf file open. It has all of the articulations added to the drone model that we've been working with. And now we want to add an attach point. So attach points fall underneath the articulations block in the gmdf file, but they don't fall under any one particular articulation. So whereas before we saw that if we're taking Aurelia as an example, we had the Aurelia articulation, and then under stages we added all these different transformations that actually allow us to articulate the 3D model. And then we did the same for the propellers, where we want to add the attach points in our gmdf file is actually as another block of code underneath the articulations block. So I'm going to hit comma, go to a new line, control space, and you'll see that one of the options here is attach points. So I'm going to add that block, new line, and all that needs to go in this attach points block of code is the name of the attach point in your 3D model. So again, referring back to the articulations, we saw, for instance, with the propellers here, in order to actually move the objects, the propeller objects in our 3D models, we had to define which objects that articulation refers to under this model nodes block. So it's a similar idea here where we need to define the attach point and what it's actually called in the 3D mesh. So I haven't actually added it yet, but I'm going to call it attach point preemptively because I know that's what I'm going to name it once I add it to the 3D model. So we have attach point added underneath the attach points block. Then we're going to go back to our 3D model, our drone 3D model, and we're going to actually add the attach point itself. So an attach point can be any model or any piece of the mesh that you want, but it's best to use a very unobtrusive object just so that your attach point isn't actually a physical piece of geometry. So I want to add an attach point here at the top of this little sensor on our drone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the object of interest where I want the attach point to go. I'm going to go into edit mode, which can be either done using this drop down here in the upper left, or I can press the tab key. I'm going to select the actual face that I'm interested in, where I want that attach point to be placed. And with that face selected, I'm going to hit Shift and S, and I'm going to select cursor to selected. That's going to bring the 3D cursor to our face of interest, and that means whenever I add an object in Blender, it's going to be placed right where the 3D cursor is. So the two main objects that I use to add attach points to my 3D models are either under mesh, and I should clarify, to add an object in Blender, I'm using Shift and A. And then under mesh, I'll either select single vert for a single vertex, very unobtrusive, or if you prefer, you can select an empty object, which, as it sounds, is literally an empty object. There's no geometry in it. It's just a placeholder. I'm going to choose empty for this demonstration just because it's a little bit easier to visualize, as a single vertex is kind of small and gets lost. So under empty, I'm going to choose plane axes, and you can see I added this axis right here. And this object being an empty, this axis is not going to show up in STK. So if I zoom in a little bit, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna move this empty object up ever so slightly. So I'm gonna use the G key for move, and then I'm gonna hit Z to constrain the movement to the Z axis, and I'm gonna move it up ever so slightly, just so that in STK the attach point is not buried and contained within the geometry of our little sensor here. The last step in Blender is we want to parent the attach point to the overall mesh, because right now if I select the drone mesh itself and I move it, we can see, well, we can't see because it's so dark. Let me go into solid shading viewport mode. And now we can see the empty a little bit better. So if I move the drone model, you can see, well, the attach point location that we've added to our 3D model is not moving along. So I'm going to parent that by selecting the empty object itself, or a single vertex if that's what you've chosen to add. And then I'm going to select the body of the drone. It can also just be any object that you want to parent it to, as long as the hierarchy of the mesh is set up properly. And with the body selected as our active selection, which you can tell by the bright orange highlight versus the dark orange highlight on our empty, I'm going to hit Control and P, and I'm going to select Object, Keep Transform. And when I do that, now if I move the drone around, you can see that the empty follows along with it. So now that we've added our attach point, I'm going to rename it actually really quickly to attach point so that it matches what we put in our gmdf file earlier. And with that renamed attach point selected and our entire object selected, I'm going to re-export the model as a GLB. And we want to call this Aurelia video, since that's the model we're working with. Make sure I include all selected objects, and we'll export. Then back in VS Code, in my gmdf file, you can see we've already added the attach point. So I'm going to go ahead and save my gmdf. I'm going to go into my GLTF file, and I'm going to inject the information from my gmdf. So I'm going to hit F1, type inject, and select this inject gmdf into GLTF command. Then I want to make sure I save this new GLTF with the new gmdf information injected with Control and S. And finally, I'm going to right-click on the GLTF, and I'm going to select GLTF export to GLB. And then we'll choose our save location. So with that attach point now included on the 3D model, let's go into STK and take a look at how to actually access that. So first, we're going to insert a sensor. And when we go ahead and insert a sensor, it's going to ask us what object we want to attach it to. We want to attach it to our drone, since that's the object we just added our attach point to. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to close the Insert SDK Objects dialog. And I'm going to resize the sensor properties real quick. And then I'm just going to change the cone half angle. And I'm also going to have the sensor target the ground vehicle just for demonstration purposes, so we can kind of see what's going on with the sensor a little bit easier. So now that I've set up my sensor, I want to actually move the sensor's location to that attach point that we added. And this can be done in two ways. The first way, and probably the easier, a more straightforward way, is if we go to 3D graphics, vertex offset. You'll see this little frame over here called attach point. I can toggle on use, and I can select the attach point I'm interested in. So if you had like 5 different attach points, you would see those all listed here. And then if I zoom in so we can see the effect take place in real time, if I hit apply, we're going to see this sensor jump from the object's origin to the attach point that we added. Boom. So that's the first way to take advantage of the attach point. But if we don't want to go that way, what we can do instead is we can change the location under basic location. The default type, location type, is center. We can change that to point, and by default that point will be the drone center. But what we can do is we can hit the select button, and then using Analysis Workbench we can add a new point. So I'm going to hit this button in the middle here, create new point. It's important that you have the object you're interested in selected over on the frame in the left. And when I hit create new point, it's going to bring up this Analysis Workbench dialog. We want to change the type point to model attachment. We have to give it a name, so I'm going to call it attach point. And then you have to select the pointable element name. And this is where, again, if you had like 5 different attach points, they would all show up underneath this drop down right here. But we only have the one, so we'll choose attach point. I'm going to hit OK, and now we've actually created the new point with Analysis Workbench. So I'm going to select that new point, and I'm going to hit OK. You'll see that the point type in the sensor properties has changed to drone attach point. And when we hit apply, again, we're going to see that the sensor jump from the object's origin to the attach point. Great. So just as a little extra, I mean, that's all there is to attach point, but just as a little extra, I'll show you how a sensor can interact with your 3D model real quickly. So the first way is if we right-click on our sensor and we navigate down to Sensor Obscuration, that'll open up the Obscuration tool, and we'll get the tool itself as well as a 3D, or really a 2D view of our sensor's field of view, as well as any obscuring objects in the sensor's field of view. So you can choose what the obscuring objects are over on the left under the obscuring objects frame. Right now we have the facility chosen, but I'm going to control and click the drone so that we can see how the drone is obscuring its own sensor. And when I do that, close the movie timeline, and I hit apply, we're going to see now in the 2D view over here, we see how the sensor is being obscured by the drone itself as well. And then, the obscuration tool is really used to calculate the percent obscuration. So if we just do an example, let me change the time step to 30 seconds and hit apply. And then I'm going to compute over the scenarios interval. When I do that, we can generate a graph, and now we can see here's how the sensor is being obscured over the scenarios interval in terms of a percentage. So we can see about 3 minutes into the flight of this drone, almost 50% of the sensor is obscured, whereas in the other parts of the scenario it is much less obscured. Along a similar vein, we can use the As-El mask tool to visualize in the 3D view how the sensor is being obscured. So whereas the obscuration tool shows the obscuration in 2D, the as-l-mask tool and body masking files can be used to show how the sensor is obscured in the 3D view, and it will also affect analyses such as access calculations. So the as-l-mask tool can be accessed by right-clicking on the sensor and navigating down to Sensor, as-l-mask. And with this tool open, again, you can select which objects are going to actually be obscuring the sensor. You have to choose what time in the scenario you want this body masking file to be generated for. So I'm going to copy and paste the current time that we're at. And I'm going to increase the window dimension ever so slightly just to get a little bit more accurate of a body mask file. Once I set all those settings, I can hit Apply. You'll see the window resize. And then to actually generate the file itself, we just hit Compute. It's going to ask you where you want to save your body mask file. And once you hit Save, you'll actually see the computation take place. It's going to be lightning quick, so look out. Okay, it's done now. With the body mask file generated, we can open up our sensor properties. We can go to Sensor as-l-mask and change Use to mask file and load in the mask file that we just generated. And then we want to toggle on this Use Mask for Access constraint. When I hit Apply, well, you'll see that the 3D view didn't change at all. But right now, we've set up the sensor to accurately consider the obscuring objects for access calculations. So if the sensor was obscured by one of the objects that you chose in that obscuring objects list, you would see access be denied during that time frame. However, if we want to actually visually see what the sensor is seeing in the 3D graphics window, we can come down here to 2D graphics projection. We can turn on Use Constraints under Field of View. And if we scroll down in this list to Sensor as-l-mask and select that, hit Apply, and now we see what the sensor is seeing in real time in the 3D view. So you can even see there that where the propeller is blocking the sensor, that there's a little slice cut out of the sensor's field of view. And you can see how the facility there is also blocking our sensor's field of view. And as I said, the access calculations will be affected by this, by the obscuring objects. So thank you for joining me on this discussion about attach points. I'll see you in the next video for model pointing.